Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Hello to all those of you out there in the Betaverse, in the network, in the mycelial place of hope, love, peace, music, all that kind of stuff. My name is Ryan Erickson. I'm a host and producer of this little space and a contributor to the BetaCodex network. And I would like to welcome you specifically and with an open heart to season 2 of BetaCodex Live, this program that we've been hosting here for several months and are looking to do that in for quite a long time. And behind me that you can't see right now is the one and only Niels Pflaeging. Hello, Niels.
Hello, Ryan. Good to be starting season 2 with you together.
Yes,
Together
indeed.
again.
Together again. There's probably a song in there somewhere, I'm sure, but
It sounds like a Muppet song. Yeah, there's a Muppet movie, the last one I think, where they had this together again. It's a wonderful song. Very funny.
Okay, all right. So I'll trust you. And I have to say I'm embarrassed because I am a Muppets fan. This is from our shared childhood, I think. But so here we are, season 2, and we've been doing this for a while. And you mentioned to me in our pre-show connection that it would be a good time to reconnect to why are we doing this?
Yes.
Why are we here? What's the point? And where could we go from here? So I'd be happy to riff on your initial thoughts about that, and then we can kind of go into the topic for today, which I'm so excited about.
When you just spoke, Ryan, I had to think of a level 42 level 42, the British pop rock band, fusion band. And I once went to a gig of level 42 in New York, and at the start of the show, Mark King, the bassist, he said, what the hell? It has been 20 years or 25 years that we haven't been touring the US. Where the hell have you been? And it's a little bit like this, restarting something like this show, this podcast, webcast, whatever it is, and starting into season 2. It's good to remember why we started this. And I think from my point of view, as a founder of the BetaCodex network, and reminding maybe people that the BetaCodex network started in 2008. Now we are in 2023, so it's been 15 years. Which is a celebratory number in a way. And I think what we had never really done well was articulating BetaCodex, connecting the BetaCodex in English, by the way, connecting it with other topics, discussing it, make it more, connectable, relatable in a way, right? And one of the attempts, I think, you might add other ideas and thoughts that we had at the time a couple of months ago or this year. But one of them was to, offer a forum where we can discuss freely, have free dialogue in a way about BetaCodex related themes. So this time it's about this book and the themes in it, and relate these things to Beta so that people can make up their mind about what it is and come and make up their mind how it's different from more shallow movements, maybe from the toolist topics and movements that we are also fed up with, and from what's happening day to day on LinkedIn and other shit platforms. So to be more profound, more, we wanted to have profound conversations about certain topics, but we also wanted to have a wide range. And in the previous season of BetaCodex Live, we did 15 sessions, I think.
16.
16. Yes.
We did the book review. I mean, we've been live 16 times.
16 times. So those were
3
16
months.
episodes. And if you want to get a taste of what BetaCodex is and can be part of it, you can dive into season 1. Ryan, what comes to your mind when you think of season 2? What should we do different as well, maybe, or the same? What should we maintain and change?
Well, the first thing I like that we did a similar theme starting off with the book, because we did the Ralph Kilman book, and we did your books to start off to kind of. I think that's connecting what makes the distinction. I think keeping on with that theme, what's the distinction between what we're talking about in BetaCodex in the principles and in how a beta organization is framed. What is so different? Because there's a lot. There's really a lot that's different. I think what I would hope, we kind of maybe make some of those differences really stark. So what are we talking about? And I think there are a couple thinkers today in the book that we're talking about that really kind of put something very, very specifically in my mind. But for this season, let's do experimentation, right? So what do we learn? How are we applying that learning to? Maybe we're going to have some other topics. Maybe someone might suggest a topic. We shall see.
Yeah.
And different timings, different ways of interacting, and to be market driven, right? To be market steered, to be with the folks who are interested in this stuff, and to be very clear about who this work is for, right? and who is. It's just, and again, I always go back to the music. That what's the song we're singing? What is the music we're playing, and who are the people who want to listen to it, dance to it, buy the record, buy the poster, and be in that music. And because this idea of an organization that is democratic, that is with real rich human relationships, and is totally, as much as can be possible, democratized and in this kind of this Follettian power with world that can take us beyond what has some of the traumas of the industrialized society that has happened, and yet to bring it all together. So I think
may I add one point that was so beautiful what you said?
Oh, please.
And it's I feel that I should add that our thing here, this format, is meant to be inviting to reimagine, rethink organizations, leadership, and so on, but also to remake organizations. I think we could say that we both, Ryan, you and I, and also others in the BetaCodex network, we share the conviction that we are not there. Things are not ideal. Things are quite messed up in a way, because we might sustain command and control, authoritarianism, colonialism, as one of the authors I've recently read calls it. I think that's a brilliant term. We retain a colonialist mindset in organizations, talking about our people, human resources, and so on, and back to how we then reframe agile and lean and make it into some shit show.
Okay.
We will continue also to use slightly colloquial language from time to time, or even strong, because this is supposed to be fun and energizing and different. And of course, we also agreed, Ryan and I, that we do not want to agree all the time. It's hard not to agree all the time. We agree on a lot of things, I think, Ryan and I, but also we want to talk about disagreements. Today, I thought of a few disagreements that I might present to you about the book.
Oh,
yeah.
Absolutely.
The idea here is not that we play along and just applaud each other all the time. The idea is also that in these sessions, we disagree. And we are also open to have guests in this second. We will see how this plays out, but we might have guests whom we civilly, in a civil way, will disagree with and agree.
And the civility, you can never control how civil someone's going to be. And that's what's about being a good citizen. I think that's another.
Yeah, we want to attack things and thoughts and ideas, not people, of course, right? So whenever we criticize something, I think we would try not to criticize the people, even if they are dead, as most of the people represented in this.
Oh, I got I got some blowback on one of my criticisms about the dead guys in the book.
Yes, recently. I might want to discuss this with you. Your attack on Taylor. I'm not sure if it's justified, but it's a good thing to discuss. Very good thing.
Yeah. Well, absolutely. Yeah. And my tendency is to go. When I really go deep into the believing, I put blinders on a lot of this stuff. So
yes.
So
and also we have initial and emotional reaction. I think this is one of the great qualities of this book that we want to discuss today. That we want to honor. I think we really want to honor it, right?
Absolutely.
It's a brilliant book.
Oh,
and
Absolutely.
and in a way, the book honors thinkers of management business as well. So this is all about paying tribute to people. And again, the thing is, we do not want to criticize people here or focus on, but criticizing ideas, reflecting on ideas, and making distinctions, as you so well said before.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I'm happy to go right into the book. I mean, we can certainly talk about what we want to do with this with our format, and we'll have plenty of chances to do that too. So
Yes.
So there were a few things in my initial riff here about that book, The Capitalist Philosophers by Andrea Gabor, released in 2000. 23 years ago, this book was released.
Yes, not exactly new, right?
Not exactly new, and there's some there's some stuff that again it's okay. So writ large, it's like this timeline. So for me, it was like it draws a very interesting timeline of the development. It didn't just go with profile with them and biographical. It was very much this spinning of a tale, like this grand arc of how thinking, management thinking, organizational construction had happened through the years, and each of the chapters brought in a little more of the story. And, from this, actually, in one of the chapters, like the McNamara chapter, for example, Bob McNamara, who was, brought the whiz kids of statistical control and the bean counters into prominence after World War II. I wrote underneath it, The Empire Strikes Back, because we had in Taylor through Follett and Barnard and Mayo and Roethlisberger, all this kind of stuff. The names, many of whom I had not encountered before in my reading.
I mean, this is a difference between you and me, Ryan. I studied economics and business administration, so to me, all the names were in a way familiar because of my studies.
Mm-hmm.
So this kind of book, for me, it was returning to some of the figures of management. Who in my studies were very, were of course only touched upon in very shallow ways. I mean, what we learn in business schools on Taylor or Mayo is part bullshit, part half truth, part touch of reality. So it's very shallow. And I think one of the qualities of this book, we should also mention that Andrea Gabor is a journalist. She wrote a book on Edwards Deming before, The Man Who Invented Quality. I think that's the title of that book. So she's a professional writer, and it shows up in the writing, I think, right? It's beautiful, it's intense, it's like crime stories, right? And as you well put, the chapter has 10, book has 10 chapters, right? But it touches not 10 people, but 13 or something, because some of the chapters are around 2 people, like in the case of Douglas McGregor and Abraham Maslow are put into one chapter, or Alfred Dupont and Alfred Sloan, so 2 practitioner managers of weight in the United States. All are Americans, with the exception of Mayo, who was Australian, I think, originally. So there's no chapter on Kurt Lewin. I think is a pity. It's a pity. I do not know why he's missing. Maybe I overlooked it, but she mentioned him quite a few times in the book.
Edgar Schein too. It's mentioned.
I would not have included him either, but that's interesting that you're mentioning this. Yes. There are a couple of figures that, of course, come to mind who would be an addition to this list of people, right? But it includes some of our notable heroes. Edwards Deming, of course, is there. I mean, Taylor himself, that's the first chapter on Taylor. Then Mary Parker Follett is the second chapter, very well placed as well, I think.
Yeah,
we have McGregor and Drucker as well, who are classic heroes of the BetaCodex movement.
Yeah, I mean the narrative style, it's certainly that kind of blast in the beginning. You kind of get this real very and again,
it's a brilliant opening chapter, right?
I didn't realize she was a journalist, but it totally makes sense, because there's a lot of opining and a lot of dramatic framing of the stuff, specifically in Taylor. So you kind of come across, at least I did, this very manipulative, evil evil character, and Taylor.
Oh, that's what you got. Okay.
Well, I did. Well,
Oh,
again, I'm taking it very abstract, but the real theme I got was that how he was so had such disdain for
really?
the worker in his mind. Well, because the whole Schmidt thing.
But she does a beautiful thing to talk about this, because I think she does a great job in describing the Schmidt episode.
Yes.
And how it came about, why it's written like that in the book, what's the background. And I got from the description of that, I got a totally different image of Frederick Taylor than you got, interestingly.
Well, so there's the Schmidt thing, and that the idea that he was so, at least the way she paints it and the way I received it, was that Taylor was very anti-labor in terms of labor organization, anti-union, potentially. That's what I got from it. And so that was one thing that kind of stuck in my head. The other thing was his manipulation of Louis Brandeis, the Supreme Court justice, in the congressional hearings that happened as when Taylor was. I think that's kind of how, if I remember it, how Brandeis brought Taylor to Congress and to kind of spin his defense and explanation of scientific management. He kind of pulled the wool over Brandeis's eyes, as I read it in the book, in that he was painting this picture of how wonderful scientific management was for everybody, that it was this humane thing. But there was a lot of antagonism and unrest in the companies, that many of the companies where scientific management was adopted and employed. And the two companies where that he brought as success examples were companies that prior to his arrival already had very forward-thinking progressive policies and a stance towards labor and management collaboration. And so that there was fertile soil that he brought that in, and so there was a willingness from the workers to accept these kinds of divisions of task in this management worker division. So you've got a few things to say and some blowback about my receipt of that.
Yes, and I think this is a good conversation to have about Frederick Taylor, who is the starting figure of this book, and of course usually depicted as the inventor of management and so on. And there are many facets of it. And the world the world is strongly divided between seeing Taylor as hero or anti-hero, and we might disagree. There's no truth, of course, in this. I have read both Taylor's books as actually, and there is a biography, The One Best Way, I think it's called.
I have not read that.
Readable as well, written by a journalist. But I think Andrea Gabor does a great job in summing up what's written in that biography. She strongly pulls from that material, which is very detailed and very rich in insight and information and background on Taylor. Which so we're talking about differences in perception, and I'm quite sure, Ryan, if you would read the same chapter again in maybe 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, you would read it differently and get another. So I think what's brilliant about this book is that it offers us to reflect about our own stances that we already have, and offers additional visions. For example, my vision of Taylor is not that he was manipulated, and my reading of the relationship between Taylor and Louis Brandeis, who probably is much more well known in the US than in Germany, right?
Yeah.
There is a reading of this historical. There's another book. I cannot even come up with the name of the book. It's about sustainability and how management was invented as well. So it plays with figures of Taylor and Brandeis and Follett.
Oh, okay.
And that book gives a totally different picture of the whole story around Brandeis. Brandeis, by the way, he knew both. He was related and friend of both, or related at least, of both Taylor and Follett. So if there is a connection personally between Taylor and Follett, we do not know if the two ever met. which is very interesting for reading the first chapters.
Ooh, yeah.
The connecting person is Louis Brandeis, who was then later Supreme Judge or something.
Supreme Court Justice.
Supreme Court Justice, yeah.
University founder, very prominent. Yeah.
Very prominent figure. He's still a household name in the United States, of course, in U.S. history. And of course, a very progressive, very political man, right? Brilliant. Residing in Boston, I think, or coming from Boston, just like Follett, not Taylor, who was East Coast, but came from Philadelphia, right? So in this East Coast intellectual scene of Philadelphia, Boston, New York, whatever else is there.
The Atlantic States, yeah.
Yes. So, and that reading, that the other book, we can put this in the show notes or wherever, offers, they say that it was Louis Brandeis who really influenced Taylor, not the other way around. So in a way, Brandeis used Taylor to position management as a topic for environmental protection, actually, which was a huge topic. There's a great movie with, now they escape me, two beautiful actors, Jennifer, oh my God, what's her name? She played a X-Men superhero as well, the one that changes.
Oh, Jennifer Lawrence.
Yeah. What's her name? And the most good-looking...
Jennifer Lawrence is the X-Men one, but it's
Jennifer Lawrence. Jennifer Lawrence and the guy, oh my God, he's the only Hollywood actor who speaks fluent French. Gorgeous man, beautiful man. Okay, they play a couple in that time, and this guy deals in deforestation. We have to do this figure. Jennifer Lawrence and the guy.
Was this Silver Linings? Was it Silver Linings Playbook?
No. That's another movie. Yeah, that's the guy. But a different movie. They made another movie together. What's the name of the guy?
Oh, good Lord. It was Matthew McConaughey, possibly.
No. The other one.
Bradley Cooper.
So Bradley Cooper and Jennifer Lawrence made this other not well-known movie, which is about the deforestation of America in the industrial age. Very interesting movie. Not so pretty, not so happy.
Well,
it's about their marriage and so on, and the conflict. But it shows very well the environment in which Taylor and Follett and Brandeis lived. Total deforestation. What today we say, the Brazilians are killing the Amazon. The same thing happened in America at the time.
And still is.
Exactly. So Louis Brandeis was, in a way, a pioneer environmentalist and also a very political, very democracy-loving person. Of course, his wife is a notable figure as well. And Brandeis appropriated, in a way, Taylor's ideas and concept and work for his political campaign around environmentalism, which is very interesting. And if you read the very first page of Frederick Taylor's book, it comes up there in the first paragraph, environmental protection as a topic. I
started reading Principles of Scientific Management. So again, that I did not. I'm a musician, right, man? So I came this through a different path. I haven't ever read Principles of Scientific Management, and it did not endear me to him by reading that book either. But please go ahead.
And by the way, I think we have to extend this session maybe a little bit longer to be fair to the book and so on.
Oh yeah.
You read from the chapter that Taylor positioned himself as an enemy of labor or labor unions. I think it was a little bit different. My reading, not the truth. My reading.
Yeah.
In a way, I think Frederick Taylor was convinced. I think, and this is in the sources as well, that we would have to discuss it separately. Yeah. I think he ideologized that labor unions would be unnecessary if good management practice.
Okay.
Yeah,
right.
I did. Of course, the mechanization of his tactics, his techniques, so to say, brought up managers and employees, workers, and unions up against him and his style. And this congressional hearing, which he also mentioned, I think, of course, he then depicted himself as a fool in a way. He wasn't fit, I think, to take the political stance. Not like Brandeis, who was apparently
he was an expert at that domain. Yeah.
And Taylor, he stepped into that process, congressional hearing process, and depicted himself as a naive fool, which was, I think, totally unnecessary. So yeah, different readings of the very same person. Very interesting topics.
So I did want to take one, because I'm sure you got quotes through the whole book that you wanted to bring. There was one from the Taylor chapter, that one I just came across this morning. Okay. It was actually that quote from Brandeis, and I think you find this one interesting. Is it, without industrial democracy, he maintained, Brandeis, political democracy was a mockery. Right?
Isn't that brilliant? Isn't that brilliant? Industrial, we wouldn't say that too quickly, right?
Yeah, well, industrial, and just the rest of it, I think it's even better. Industrial democracy.
Read it again? Can you read it again? I think it's so beautiful.
Without industrial democracy, he maintained, Brandeis, that political democracy was a mockery. Industrial democracy demanded that employees have the opportunity of participating in decisions as to what shall be their conditions and how the business shall run, he said. And this is the kicker. What is the use of having industry if we die in producing it?
Wow. That shows the quality of Brandeis's thinking. He is certainly which is interesting again, right? He is not one of these.
No.
Chapter figures, Brandeis, right? But he is well behind it. He can, this kind of thinking, of course, to improve upon that in a way, I think, to make it more contemporary. It's impossible, right? It's totally contemporary. And it has been widely ignored by, I think, not so much by Taylor, but by the followers. And this is very well depicted in the book, right? The decline of philosophy to ideology, to stupidity, to toolism, to utter propaganda, right? I think Andrea Gabor does a great job in showing that range of what
I think a subtitle of the book could be The Rise of the Military-Industrial Complex.
Oh, yes.
Partially.
Very well.
Or the management industrial complex, whatever. Is that side of it, it was very, very clear to me in terms of how World War I kind of squashed a lot of what Mary Parker Follett was bringing.
Yes,
and that and then there was a growth in human relations after that. Then World War II happened and said, oh, we have to do all the stuff that we were doing to collaborate and coordinate with government and really bring it to the nth degree with McNamara. And then so far, then that just kind of sets the train running. And then the re-engineering folks, Hammer and what was the other guy? Hammer and Champy. And that just kind of accelerated it through so it's this whole train going. And I'm like, oh my God.
And of course, I think the big consulting firms are still driving in the same ideology and cherishing the same. And remaking it all the time, now in the shape of OKRs. Recently in design thinking, which I think is precarious as well as a concept, or OKRs or agile scaling, and so on, right? All these things are continuing. This is, I think,
you're throwing a whole season out in this one sentence.
Am I? No. Oh, we have so many other topics.
Yeah, well, sure.
But here's the thing that I think we should mention in the context of talking about this book. You just outlined it beautifully, but it should be mentioned for people who might be interested in reading the book. By the way, we will discuss this book in a BetaCodex book club session on the 24th of October. If somebody wants to join us, everybody's invited. But if you want to join us, you must read the book prior to the session and sign up in our LinkedIn BetaCodex group network. LinkedIn group. You have to sign in, opt in, or get in touch with us to sign in or sign up. It's no charge. It's just a discussion of the book. But one of the things that I think you just implicitly mentioned, and we should make it explicit, is Andrea Gabor does an incredible job in telling profound stories about the people and their history and their background and their thinking. Yeah, which is of course highly debatable. Some of the things, exactly what we discussed about Taylor, for example. You can find this different readings of the character in all of those chapters. But what she also does, I think, which is beautiful in the Taylor chapter, in the Follett chapter, in the Deming chapter, I think as well, the ones that I read with most carefully, let's say, she also interweaves the story of that person who dominates the chapter, like Follett, with who else, what was the surrounding, and what was happening. That's it's done.
It makes it so readable. I can hardly stop reading it. I mean, it was just,
it's like you could turn it into a serious TV show or serious stuff. It's very powerful. The prose is very good, of course, technically, but it's also so rich in context. And even if you might say, for example, sometimes I thought, no, I know that there is another reading to that, another interpretation that I think is good, and another background story, but still. The most of it is extremely accurate and intense, and she makes beautiful connections with how, for example, the interweaving between Drucker and everybody else, Deming and others who followed and so on, and Follett and others. And she brings in so many characters. In a way, the 13 major philosophers are just the first line actors, and there are hundreds behind it that she mentions. And
absolutely. And she made an interesting or a very specific statement that she did not focus on the doers as much in terms of the Bezoses and the Jack Welches and all. And although she did bring some of them in, a little Jack Welch, Sloan, of course, being Alfred Sloan being the huge, the most. Obvious CEO, and Chester Barnard, who I had never heard of. I had never heard of Chester Barnard.
Yes, he's an interesting figure. He would be a very interesting figure to discuss in one separate section, because there's so many different readings of his book being brilliant. I got it, and I think it's nothing really. But but he's a big figure in management science. He's like close to Taylor, like Taylor, Chester Barnard. That's like the reading of it overall. And it's interesting that, of course, Chester Barnard, he produced this one book, legendary book that he rewrote during decades, interestingly.
Functions of the Executive, right? That's the one.
Which I struggle with that book, I must say. For me, he's definitely not a beta thinker. When I wrote this BetaCodex white paper on Follettianism, I went to it, I think, into a little bit similar process as what Andrea Gabor did here for this book. I wanted to try to sort people into the Taylorist school of thinking and the Follettian school of thinking. Yeah, because that white paper, it hypothesizes, and I think it's justified to say that there were two schools of management that were born at the time of Brandeis, Taylor, and Follett. The Taylorist school, as we might say, which has been dominating for over 100 years now, and the Follettian school, which has been the minority report, so to speak. So I tried to sort all these thinkers into one of these schools, but not, judgingly, but reasoning in a reasoning way. And I did that. I had the same problem with Barnard that you just said, Ryan. He's not the figure that we so intensely deal with. He's not so. In a way, his name comes up, but his work, relatively unknown, not totally misjudged as Taylor. Taylor is totally misjudged, by the way. So it's an interesting.
Well, it's easy to misjudge him because he was running with folks who were responsible for so much evil, in terms of treatment of workers and Henry Ford as Ford moved on in the mechanization of the human beings in that organization.
But I think we cannot blame Taylor for Fordism and for Ford's shortcoming. By the way, Ford is another figure that I think is very interesting, very misjudged. His anti-Semitism, by the way, that is to be judged harshly, of course. That's no debate around it. But I think in another field, and he was a self-marketer. I would like to watch his movie, for example. There's a Ford movie. We should watch this.
The Ford and Ferrari movie. I heard that was awesome.
It must be very interesting. I would like to watch it, because Ford was so brilliant. He produced a movie about himself.
Oh, that one? Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Did you? It must be very interesting to watch it, with hindsight and so on. But one of the things that I think is notable in Ford, it's probably in the book, but I do not know in which chapter. Ford accomplished one interesting thing for our times, I think. He appreciated the worker in a very interesting way, in that he multiplied salaries at Ford at a certain time from $1 a day to $5, which imagine that would happen today. So in a way, Ford, he also had a social vision. Of course, there were shortcomings in their ideology. The same goes for Taylor, right?
Well, he's a man of his time. He was a man of his time,
Exactly.
and I think we lose that with so many thinkers, and I as so many others give Taylor such a hard time and Ford such a hard time because of what that has wrought. Because
Yes, I
because
think
there's
their
folks
best
that didn't
intentions
release that.
and their good
Didn't release-
intentions were overlooked, and they were profound good intentions. Ford Taylor's writing in his. By the way, I visited the Taylor archives close to New York. In that,
Really?
I went after the fact. I also went to Philadelphia to visit his former home. Boxley, his house, which doesn't exist in its former state anymore. But I actually sneaked on the territory of the house, but it's a private home now. I went onto the grounds to take a look, to appreciate a little bit what it's like, what it was like. And I also went to visit his graveyard, his tomb in a way.
Oh, wow.
So I'm a fan of Taylor. He's the founder in a way. He's the founder.
He is the man. It's interesting that the management exorcist would go to the
to exercise Taylor. You have to be close to it first, and understand it well. You have to confront the past. And of course, Taylor, he has these several facets which are very well.
It's the totality of the person. Right, and I think, we get, because of our time here in this day, we get lost with that, in assuming it's only one side of someone. I wanted to say one thing about Barnard that struck me as, okay, so what was his contribution other than that book? As I read the last part of the chapter, was that his idea of management being influencers. And that using, and again, this is like using persuasion, which becomes I don't want that.
Yes,
but the
value,
valuing influence and the informal network, and at the end of it, there's also this redeeming thing that Gabor says, is that moral authority and a valuing of principles, that should be that was one of his contributions, is to wield that authority responsibly that you have invested in you because of whatever positional hierarchy, but to be moral with that. So okay, all right.
He certainly was a pioneer in reflecting about the role of the manager, or the executive, as he called it, and what should be and should not be their role, right? And I think that we always have to consider that these people were pioneers. Taylor was a pioneer of management consulting as well, by the way. Yeah. And of course, you shared something on LinkedIn, a page of this chapter about Taylor, and where there's this criticism that the critical thing, I think Gabor judged it correctly, that the missing piece in Taylor's arsenal and thinking was that organizations are systems, human social systems that are designed and that imply or suggest behaviors, or create behaviors, and seeing that again in your post and looking at it again in the book, I think it's easy to judge people like Freud or pioneers like Freud or Taylor for the shortcomings of their theory or conceptualizations, because they were the pioneers. They had to build on something. And I mean, Taylor pioneered management thinking, management practice. He gave management a scientific touch, in a way, at least. Some people say that he didn't work scientifically, but I think that's misjudging as well, because I think doing things in practice as a consultant at the time and observing it, conceptualizing it, doing it again, he did that very seriously in his way. Were there shortcomings? Yes, of course there were shortcomings.
But before he arrived on the scene, there was precious little quantitative analysis that was happening.
Exactly. And he brought that in a way, or he opened the door for quantitative techniques that we have long have an over accentuation of quantitative techniques in management science or business schools. That is not, we shouldn't root that back to Taylor, who just opened the door for it being introduced, and to, so very interesting to reflect about.
Yeah.
Do you have other preferred chapters or some things that you?
Well, so I have, again, it would be, you just have to say, I totally love the chapter on Follett. That's just like the holy trinity of the BetaCodex is Follett, Deming, Drucker, right? It's partially, but McGregor. I mean, so
McGregor,
but then again, McGregor's in there.
Yeah.
So one of my, oh God, so many favorites. I didn't know much. So first of all, I'll tell you a couple. The chapter on Maslow and McGregor was very interesting to me because I had no idea that Maslow had eventually had such an influence, or had written a real meaty book on management. And I had no idea. So this whole the use
psychology in the US?
Well, he's totally maybe this is just me geeking out about that side of things in Agile, but he's very much someone who is referred to a lot in coaching Agile and all that.
With the hierarchy of needs, probably.
Oh yes, absolutely. Not the Psyche and management or Maslow management book, but it's just the psychology of it.
Yes.
So I was totally floored by that, and okay, so that leads me to another thing, that this book is a wonderful bibliography of the whole history of 20th century management thinking.
Totally.
I think that she's great footnoting, and I was going all the way back to the footnotes and saying, I need to read that book. The Maslow management book was the first one there. The other thing about
that, and I have never read it. It was unavailable for many decades. There's a new edition from the 90s or 2000s.
Yeah, and when they renamed it, because I'm trying to find that at my library as well.
Yes.
McGregor, of course, being a huge part. We can probably have several thought on Follett McGregor, but I didn't know that McGregor was. I don't know if he was the president of Antioch College or what he was, but
yes, I think president. Yes, he was an administrator in a way of that school for a while, but only for a while, right? 5 years.
But he was, and again, it's so sad that school no longer exists. It died very recently.
I didn't know.
A couple years ago, but it went away. So, and I think that's part and parcel. The sadness of that is because that kind of thinking. It's ahead of its time, but anyway, I thought the Antioch College connection was very interesting.
And they were. McGregor is one of these figures who deserves his own movie. I think, because he connected so many of these figures. Of course, followers like Warren Bennis, pupil colleague, Warren Bennis trainee, yes, and also something that had escaped from me for a long time. It was also McGregor who gave Kurt Lewin a certain job. I think the first job arranged for the first job of Kurt Lewin in the United States. So McGregor is one of the great connectors of many of these figures. Many important figures of U.S. history, I would say. He also was part of originating the socio-technical systems movement, of which then other thinkers like Ed Schein, Chris Argyris, Eric Trist, the Emery Trist collaboration, all these come into play, and they are all mentioned thinkers in the book as well. So it's a very rich. It's a figure that has had an enormous influence, and I think, of course, McGregor,
like Follett, woefully undervalued.
Yes, woefully undervalued, even though everybody still knows his name and major book, Human Side of the Enterprise. But then, of course, he passed away before publishing his follow-up book, which was concluded by Warren Bennis, and is not so great, I think, but a very essential thinker who was also a practitioner, a consultant. So very interesting in McGregor, I think. He worked as a consultant for companies. He was a researcher. He was an administrator of a business school, so in a way, a CEO of Antioch College, which was very progressive at the time. So very
progressive. one of the most.
And also, he had this connection with Maslow and with Kurt Lewin. So he was, in a way, one of these systems thinker, which is highly underappreciated. I think this connection between the systems thinkers, starting with Follett, then through Lewin, McGregor, Deming,
Herb Simon.
Yes, I haven't followed that chapter. Still haven't read this chapter. I'm a little bit anti-Simon inclined, so I have to give him a chance and read that chapter.
Well, so I'll go to that one a little bit. The thing I got from that chapter was the idea of, I didn't know how important Carnegie Mellon was to the development of management philosophy, and that's because to my mind, that's a computer engineering school, a software programming school, a tech school, but that knowing that in that school, the chapter, not to spoil the story for you, but it's very much about the conflicting, the spicy soup of the quantitative versus the qualitative and the human relations side. So, and that there was this very, very socially dense kind of environment there at Carnegie Mellon, which is, I think it was very indicative of a transition in thinking, and that how the educational establishment for business management that was struggling with that.
Yes. Yes. MIT also plays a big role in this history, I think.
Well,
one that would not expect maybe at first.
And Alfred Sloan, right? Because the chapter on DuPont, Chandler, and Sloan, I think what I wrote down, just the very high level notes about that Chandler was a documentarian so much, and I think that idea of getting inside, which Deming did also later on in terms of it's interesting, but the progenitor of that being the DuPont papers, and knowing how the inner workings of a corporation worked, and how it's interesting that in Sloan's writing that Ford didn't want that. They burned the papers that they had of his at Ford, and didn't want those released in the public, but which eventually were. And of course, the Sloan School of Management at MIT, which you were just mentioning, which kind of brought me to that. And again, another theme of this book, which is prevalent, is what role did the academic institutions play, and how did Harvard Business School become prominent there? What was the role again of Carnegie Mellon, of MIT, and all these pods of thinking,
or non-thinking?
Well, yeah, a lot of thought following going on.
One of the things I think that we get from this kind of book is also that knowledge, I mean, that's in a way included in the introduction that Andrea Gabor wrote, which is excellent and very rich already. Knowledge in business thinking, management thinking, organizational or capitalist thinking, if you want to say so, it doesn't come from academic research. Not at all, right? It doesn't come from rigorous academia. It comes from the practitioners, the worldly philosophers that she talks about, from the thinkers, and from all. She also, in the introduction, depicts the main figures of this book, in clusters, and so some of them were consultants, some of them were practicing managers like Chester Barnard and Sloan and so on.
Yeah.
And others were academics, but their ideas did not necessarily come from rigorous study. Abraham Maslow being a notable exception, by the way.
Right. But by and large,
experiments.
But by and large, it was this integration of practice and theory, and that without good theory, practice is useless, right?
Exactly. And without good theory, you cannot even do academic study. Academic science. So you need theory first. The steam has come first, and then you can test it with studies and so on. Yeah. Are there other things that you would like to highlight, Rijon? You have to.
So it's easy to read. The characters. I went through when I was highlighting. I got to a point where I was highlighting. As soon as I saw a new name, I highlighted it. And so I would know that when we went back to, oh, who is this? Oh, this is with that person. This is Whitehead, for example. Was this philosopher there? And that
Yes.
who are these people that and you were saying very, very astutely there underneath, who are all the characters who supported this thinking? Who was putting this stuff into practice? Where were they doing it? Why were they doing it?
Yes.
So,
by the way, Follett was influenced by Whitehead, I think, or if they even knew each other. I'm not quite sure about it.
I forget the specific. Oh,
and German philosophers also influenced her. So all these are mentioned in the book and enrich this story. So this background. Okay, where did the capitalist philosophers get their philosophic ideas and influences from? That's also very richly.
Yeah. And I think it's also capitalism gets a bad rap. A lot of time, but I think
so?
Well, in the circles that I write in,
generally, you mean
generally,
not. I like to say that capitalism is pretty much a fighting name against, and the real name. But there's not total agreement on this. But I like to say that the name of the thing that capitalism denounces as bad is market economics, market economy. Yeah, that's the factual name. And capitalism is already a fighting name against something. If you say capitalism, you're already depreciated. Too greedy, And I think this is not the truth, by the way. This is how we frame things. I would argue that capitalism. So it's interesting that she calls the book the Capitalist Philosophers.
Well, and I think there are a couple real in the end of, I don't know if this is the end of the Drucker chapter. And this is what kind of brings it home for me, and it's almost like this is kind of the point of the book. And well, there's one that Follett's the point of the but the Drucker piece was that Drucker's most compelling argument may be that for capitalism and democracy to survive, society must find a way to mitigate the social costs of a relatively free market economy. So that's about nuance. That's about balance. That's about all the stuff we're talking about. So the democracy, citizenship, valuing the planet, the people, all this kind of stuff.
And the political sphere. I think it can be said that this is a very political book, and it always these ideas to the political impact that they had, or the philosophically political ideas behind the thinking and work of these pioneers, and the outcomes that were often different, right, than what was intended. Yes, this is. I think that's why this is so rich. It is not. It doesn't over focus on the people. It always contextualizes. It always draws the political. Talks about the political environment and the consequences of these ideas. Yeah.
Well, so and if we're kind of winding down here, because we have a supersized episode this week. Who knows? We might have a couple of supersized episodes this season. I'm not sure. It'll be happening all over the place.
The standard duration of our sessions is 40 minutes. We are a little bit over this, but
we're 52, 51. So, do you have Cliff Notes? Are you familiar with the concept of Cliff's Notes and like book notes that are like this? Okay, so in the U.S., as you're in the high school in the 80s, that was if you were assigned a book in class, which you could either A, read the book, or B, go to the bookstore and buy what's called a Cliff Notes summary.
I know what that is.
Okay, so this book is 350 pages. It's like a Cliff Note for the entirety of management thinking of the 20th century. And it's this real wonderful, well-readable spine that sends you to all these other great books. If you want to read Follett, there's actually the creative trying to think the core beta Follett book. There's actually a version on Google Books that you can read for free if you want.
But this book, do you find it on Google Books?
Oh, not this, but the Follett book. But my point being that this book just it's a great way to further your studies. and
Yes.
and to say, who are all these people? Why is this person? I've heard of this person before, but why are they? Oh, that's why they're important. Well, how can I learn more
Yes.
about this person? And
It's a great entry point to researching more about these people and the history of management, of course, overall. Yeah. It's in a way an MBA in one book, I think.
I was going to say the same thing. Yeah. How dare we agree on so much?
Yeah. Who's to blame?
Who's to blame? It's your fault. No. Well, great, man. This is, I think, a great way to wind down. We are working on a lot of stuff for this year. It's certainly working together on the qualification courses for the BetaCodex. I think some of those themes will come in terms of time box change, maybe, and the other pieces of the BetaCodex foundations that we may talk about. Who knows? But that, I know what that's going on. You were going to bring something else in here too.
No, I would just like to remind people that there's still time to read this book for our BetaCodex book club session, which is free. You're free to attend. We will go deeper into the qualities of the book during that session. They last these BetaCodex book club sessions last 90 minutes, and the one on this book is going to happen on the 24th of October, I think.
Yes, 24th, 90, and we've already taken up nearly 60 with just you and me talking about this book, and we have barely gotten into.
Yes, we haven't even talked about the book properly. So yeah, that's the kind of stuff.
Yeah, we totally didn't talk about Follett, but
yes, that chapter is just so wonderful. If you only read one chapter, of course, the Follett chapter should be it. Yeah,
it is, and again, not knowing what her other work, she seems to be a huge fan of Follett. It seems to be a huge fan of her.
Yes. Sadly, I think she puts Elton Mayo almost as high as Follett, which is a mistake, I think. But yes, she's a huge fan of Follett, of Deming, and that shines. I mean, of Beta in a way, and that shines through in the book. I think she's very critical, very, 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 very keen observer of realities, I think.
Yes. Well, Andrea, if you happen to be watching this at some point in the future, if we find you on LinkedIn or somewhere, we email you this video. We appreciate you and this work immensely, and we'll be singing its praises long into the future. So, all right. Any final words for our friends and lovers, our friends in the BetaCodex network?
Yeah, please attend next week's session as well, if you're watching live, especially, or watching this close to the date, which is today, the 3rd of October. Join us next week for talking about a totally different subject related to Beta. Let's see what that is.
A mystery topic. So, all right, everybody, we shall end the stream now, and be well, peace, love, and music, and thank you for the precious gift of your time and attention.